Okay, everybody, we have a lot of stuff to cover in today's video, so let's get through this intro quick. Okay. So, check out this thing I have. It's an owl. You want to know what's inside of the owl? Why, it's another owl. Wow, that's crazy, right? I wonder what's inside of this owl. Holy crap, it's another owl. I didn't see that coming. I wonder what's inside of this owl. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, check it out! It's another owl! Wow, I wonder what it's going to be inside this owl. I wonder... Oh, it's a blueberry. Huh. Okay, it's a blueberry. And okay, if you really want to see, here is the tiniest owl. Okay, so I'm just gonna put those over here as a nice little owl family. Aren't they lovely? Yeah, go ahead and name the family of owls. I know you all are doing it anyway. That's a really hot discussion in the comment section. Just name the nice family of 5 owls. Okay, so anyway, today we're going to be covering the remainder of the Road to Laugh Tale supplemental chapters, or whatever you want to call them. So basically, since One Piece is on break, in the place of One Piece in Shonen Jump, they basically have been releasing these Road to Laugh Tales, and I made a video on the first one before I left on my trip to California, and so it's not really... I hesitate to say there's any new information, because really what it is basically like taking theories and condensing them down into like information we already know, but then being like, I wonder if this is going to be relevant. Like the big one from the first Road to Laugh Tale was like, where are the Straw Hats going to go next? Or where is the 4th road poneglyph located? Could it be in Elbaf? Could it be on Full-A-Lead Island? Or could it be in Vera? Now that's one of those things where I'm just like, okay, I'm pretty sure that Oda is not, like, making these. I'm pretty sure it's just, like, his editor or somebody at Shueisha that's just compiling this information together so it's easy to digest and adding in some, like, maybe it could go this direction. We don't know, though. Might be something like that, okay? But, even though it's mostly just a recap, there are some interesting things to discuss, and I missed the last 3. There's only 4 of them in total because the next chapter, the next release of Shonen Jump, will have chapter 1050. Where do we leave off? I forgot where we left off. 1054, right? That's the next one. Yeah, 1054 of One Piece will be the next chapter coming out this week. And so yeah, we have the 4 Road to Laugh Tales. So let's just cover the other 3 that I did not. Okay, so each one has a theme that it's kind of focused on. The second Road to Laugh Tale focuses mainly on the Yonko, specifically Shanks and Blackbeard's relationship. Also goes into the warlords a little bit. The third one focuses a lot on the sun god Nika, as well as the connection with Joy Boy, devil fruit types in general, and awakenings. Also, each of the Road to Laugh Tales includes sketch art. That's like one of the big things of like, here's some preliminary designs that Oda had for like Kaido's man-beast form, or Yamato's character design, or Luffy's gear 5th, or something like that. And then finally, the 4th Road to Laugh Tale that was just released with this issue of Shonen Jump covers a lot of stuff about bounties, Luffy's Gear 5 concept art, as I said, secret tales, which are pretty much just like scrapped parts of Odin's flashback that Oda did not have time for, so he just throws them in there. Also, there's an extra side story involving Yamato and Fuga, the number 2 of the numbers, to kind of explain how Yamato had sort of like a relationship with Fuga, like they were friends. So that's explained there. And then it also ends with the talk of the dawn of the new age. All right, so there's a lot of stuff to unpack. So starting off with Road to Laugh Tale number 2, the first page just focuses on how the Yonko, 2 of them have fallen, Big Mom and Kaido, and it ends with the Gorosei, like, oh, the great cleansing, it's on its way. All right, now this is something very interesting, because this was mentioned at the Reverie as the Gorosei were going to meet with Eam and the throne room. They were discussing how things are getting so crazy in the world, they might have to resort to another cleansing, okay? Anything involving a great cleansing, not a good idea, you know what I mean? Not a good thing. And the way it's implied here in the Road to Laugh Tale is sort of like, this great cleansing isn't just maybe going to happen, it is going to happen. Or the Gorosei are going to try their damnedest to make it happen, okay? Now, they might fail at that, Dragon and the Revolutionaries might get involved, other groups might might get involved, but the way it seems to imply is that they were sort of on the cusp of like going ahead with this. I imagine this is a thing that the world government does every few centuries. You know, every few centuries, there's maybe a revolutionary group, sort of like, maybe not the direct ancestors of Dragon, although they could have been, because Dragon has the Will of D, and the Will of D has always been stated to be the enemies of God. So, you know, every few centuries, there were probably some revolutionaries that bore the Will of D that rose up, and they fought against the world government, and they never managed to overtake it. They never managed to bring it down like Dragon is attempting to bring down the Tenryubito right now, right? So every few centuries, the Gorosei have to use the Great Cleansing. It could be utilizing one of the ancient weapons. Maybe they have it, or they like can only access it every now and then, or whatever. Maybe they have some other means. Maybe it's just them wiping out a few islands and then lying about the reason of how it happened. So it's sort of like, oh yeah, a bunch of these islands just got wiped out of nowhere. Huh, that's weird. Anyway, we have nothing to do with that as the world government. Just go about your business. You know, it might be something like that. So it implies that the Gorosei, after the fall of Big Mom and Kaido and the state of the world that it's in right now, they might be hitting the button here, okay? And we will see where that goes. It also goes into the news article that was published by Morgans that we didn't really find out a lot more about, but it says there are 3 specific things that Morgans covered in his issue of the World Economic Times after the Reverie. He mentions a fatality, he mentions the voting results, and he mentions an attempted murder, okay? So that was the thing that was a little bit confusing for me, because there is a fatality, like somebody straight up died at the Reverie, like that is confirmed to have happened. And then there was an attempted murder, okay? So somebody is straight up dead, and somebody else was almost dead, but isn't dead, okay? But that's still a big deal, okay? So there were 2 separate instances here. Also, the voting results, I'm pretty sure that was just the warlord abolishment, you know, like all of the kings of the lands decided to vote on like, okay, should we keep the warlord system? And they voted nay, I guess, and so then the warlords were abolished, and now we see the fallout of that already, okay? But as for the fatality, and it has something to do with Alabasta, I am almost 100% certain that Cobra Nefeltari is dead, okay? I'm pretty sure Cobra is dead. He was sick already, and he was talking about how he wanted to speak with the Gorosei. He wanted to have an audience with them. He wanted to discuss some important stuff about probably the ancient weapons and the Void Century, and the government already doesn't really like Cobra very much because his family, the Nefeltari family, was one of the original 20 founding families, but they were the one family that decided to not live at Marijois, not be Tenryubito, and live in the mortal realm, in the lower plane, okay? And so, technically speaking, if they would have stayed at Marijois, Vivi would have been a Tenryubito. Cobra would have been as well, right? But they opted not to do that, and for that reason, I think that's the reason why the Gorosei don't like them very much. Eam was sort of staring at Vivi's picture, kind of like, this could go either way. Does Eam want Vivi murdered, or does Eam like is infatuated with Evie? Is Eam infatuated with Evie? I don't know. A lot of people ask Noble about that. He has a whole couch full of them, right? I don't know. I mean, we're all kind of infatuated with Evie, right? But no, is Eam infatuated with Vivi? Okay, you know, it's like we don't know where this is going. You know, Eam was just kind of like staring at her image. Okay, so I think Cobra's 100% dead though. Okay, the attempted murder might have been the story that Morgan spun with like maybe Sabo attempted to kill Vivi. Not actually, but that's the way that the government maybe made it look, or maybe that's the way it looked to Morgans or his reporter, and that's how it got back to the newspaper of like, you know, Sabo, the second in command of the Revolutionary Army, tries to attack and kill the Alabasta princess, Vivi Nefeltari. Oh, this is a big scoop right here, big news. I'm talking like a 1930s announcer guy. I'm gonna do the whole video like this because for some reason I can't stop. Hi everybody, how you doing? I'm Tekking101 here with this sensational story. Okay, I'm never going to do that again. Actually, I'm not. I'm definitely going to do that again. But, you know, okay, anyway. The point is, yeah, fatality, Cobra, attempted murder, probably Vivi, and then the voting results for the warlords. There you go. Then we talk about the Blackbeard Pirates a little bit, just mentioning that, remember, the Blackbeard Pirates were at Fulaled Island, the Hachinosu, but then when they got the information that the warlord system was abolished, Blackbeard was like, raise the sails, men, we're gonna go and do something, zay ha 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 And then Blackbeard left. So Blackbeard is out there in the world doing something right now. He's not just chilling at the Hachinosu, eating mutton and drinking booze, okay? He's out there in the world doing something right now. And for that reason, I think whatever he is doing managed to get his bounty increased, okay? So just keep that in mind. Then we go over to Shanks. It mentions that Shanks, of course, is mainly an observer. He's not somebody like Kaido or Big Mom or Blackbeard that really kind of like takes over a lot of territories and is really pushing the gauntlet toward finding the One Piece and like putting pressure on the world government and the Marines. Typically, Shanks does not do that. But when you back him into a corner, he could be a serious threat, okay? So it just mentions that. It also mentions some things that we saw only in cover stories, okay? So that's why these Road to Laugh Tales are pretty good. There's a lot of information in One Piece, and so even with the wiki, sometimes there can be a lot of it. So it's interesting to have it like condensed in this format, okay? So remember some stuff from the cover stories. Remember Shanks and the entire Red Hair crew attended a wedding at some point. We don't know exactly where the wedding was at. I guess it was somewhere in the New World. We don't know who the wedding, like who the bride and the groom were. We don't know how this exactly went down or their relationship to Shanks in any way. But they went to a wedding. So there you go. There's that. There's also Bartolomeo. Remember, Bartolomeo landed at that one island that was controlled by Shanks, and he like ripped down their flag and burned it, and he was hawking Straw Hat merch everywhere. Bartolomeo not being aware, I think, that Shanks and Luffy have a connection already. So that could actually go in a way where if Shanks finds out about that, Shanks meets Bartolomeo and like his crew is ready to like decimate them. And then maybe Bartolomeo can mention like, hey, how you doing there, red-haired Shanks? Would you like a straw hat magnet? And Shanks is like, what are you doing? It's just like, I'm selling straw hat merchandise. I'm a member of the Grand Fleet, And there might be a little bit of misunderstanding, but if Bartolomeo can at least convince Shanks that, like, hey, I'm Luffy's friend, And then Shanks would be like, well, I'm Luffy's friend too. It's like, oh, okay, there you go. It was just a big misunderstanding. But I think Shanks would still let Bartolomeo very clearly understand the situation and be like, oh, you're friends with Luffy too. That's great. Okay, we can party. Hey, before that, though, you barged into my island and you ripped my flag down and you burned it. Now, you're Luffy's friend, and I believe you. So, I'm letting it pass this one time, but you better watch what you do in the future, my friend. Maybe Lucky Roo will, like, punch Bartolomeo in the stomach or something as just, like, a warning of just, like, okay, you're Luffy's friend. If this was any other circumstances, you realize you and your crew would be dead on the ground right now because you don't cross me in that way. But for this time, I'll let you off with just a slap on the wrist or something, right? Or like a slap on the back, and then like, Lucky Roo walks behind Bartolomeo and like, boom, like knocks him to the floor. And it's like, oh, what was that? I'm like, that was the slap on the wrist. Okay, let's go party now. Okay, right? Yeah, it might be something like that. It mentions the Kid Pirates, how Shanks had a run-in with the Kid Pirates. That's how Kid lost his arm. So there was something going on there. And it, of course, mentions Shanks' scar that we already know was given to him by Blackbeard. So just once again bringing up the fact, Shanks, Buggy had, fought with Blackbeard way back in the day when they were apprentice pirates on Roger's crew, and Blackbeard was an apprentice on Whitebeard's crew. There was interaction back then, and then eventually that led to Shanks getting the scar from Blackbeard, so just keep that in mind. That's a really big deal. The last page, or the last big page before the concept art in the second Road to Laugh Tale, is all about the swords. And I looked through them to kind of see if there was any new swords that were introduced, or like named blades, or if any blades were given a grade that we didn't previously know about. And the answer to that is yes and no. There's really no new swords mentioned. We see Roger's ace, and it's mentioned, of course, like, okay, Roger had a sword, a Saijo Owazamono grade sword, one of the 12 greatest swords ever. What happened to it, we don't know. The sword was named Ace, which was the name of his son. So is that the only reason why Roger named Ace Ace, because of the sword, or was there another reason? Like, where did the name of the sword come from? So just bringing that up. We also see Shiki's swords. Now, keep in mind, because Shiki was mentioned a lot back during when Strong World came out, but hasn't really been mentioned or focused on a lot other than just like, oh yeah, he was a member of Rox's crew. Shiki Shiki is canon, the Golden Lion, okay? And his swords are Oto and Kogarashi, okay? And they are the swords that he literally cut off his legs to escape Impel Down. That's all still canon. He took the swords and he stabbed himself, and so that's how he kind of has swords as like peg legs, so to speak. So Shiki and I guess Zeph both are sort of like the peg-legged pirates in the One Piece world. Also, something to bring up about Shiki, you know how in Strong World he had the steering wheel like shoved into his head, and that was sort of like his one of his defining characteristics. I don't think that's actually how he looks right now, so keep that in mind. I think Oda changed that, so I don't think he really has the wheel shoved into his head, all right? So a little bit of a strange sentence, but it's One Piece. So Oto and Kogarashi are mentioned to have an unknown grade, just like, with Rayleigh's sword, Vista's swords. We don't know their names, and we don't know their grades. We don't know anything about them, okay? Something that I do want to bring up that is fascinating is we get a list of ungraded swords. So swords that do not have any rank whatsoever. Law's Kikoku is one that we already knew about, which is interesting that Law has a cursed sword named Kikoku, but it doesn't have a rank. It's not even a Wazamono, which is the lowest rank. And even more fascinating, we have Kaido's Hasaikai. Kaido's Kanabo Hasaikai also is confirmed to not have a rank. It is not even a Wazamono, which once again begs the question of how exactly do these swords get a rank? Is it just the person that makes or forges the sword? And I know Hasaikai is a kanabo, not a sword, but it's put into the same category as all of this, right? So just like how Whitebeard, of course, doesn't technically use a sword, it's a naginata, yet it is still classified as a blade. Hasaikai seems to be ranked as a blade as well, except it's an unranked blade, okay? So very fascinating there. So is it like the person that makes the blade or the weapon, their renown is what carries it to have a rank, or is it the pedigree of the person that wields it? Okay, and how does a blade get upgraded? See, that's the weird thing, because Kaido was like one of the strongest people on the entire planet that wielded Hasaikai. So even if it was made by somebody a long time ago, maybe in the Vodka Kingdom where he came from, even if it was made by like some no-name blacksmith or somebody, right? The fact that Kaido's been swinging that kanabo around for decades and decades and became a pirate with the highest active bounty, if that doesn't make Hasaikai at least a Wazamono grade, then what would, So I'm starting to think now it's going entirely on the person that forges it, but then it was also mentioned by Tenguyama, or, Sukiyaki that we know now. It was also mentioned that, like, oh, yeah, Zoro, you can achieve an even higher rank with the Enma, so maybe, though, he wasn't referring to making the Enma a Saijo Wazamono, maybe he was just referring to, like, Zoro making the Enma a black blade, okay? And so he can turn it into a black blade, but he can't actually raise it to a Saijo Wazamono category, because that is something that is determined by the person that forges the blade or forges the weapon, and it can never change in that way. This is true in that we've never really seen any sword in the story go from, like, Wazamono upgraded to real Wazamono upgraded to O Wazamono. It's like whatever grade they are, it is like cemented in, and for that reason there's like whole dictionaries and like compendiums that like Tashigi has, like when Tashigi first saw the Wado Ichimonji, she was like, that's the Wado Ichimonji, and it's an Owazamono grade sword. And no matter what Zoro does to the Wado Ichimonji, even if he makes it into a black blade, the Wado Ichimonji will never become a Saijo Wazamono. It is always an Owazamono, okay? It doesn't really have anything to do with the person that wields it other than turning it into a black sword, okay? Like, for example, Mihawk's Yoru might have already been a black blade before he got it, but even if it wasn't, it was still a Saijo Wazamono before Mihawk even got his hands on it. Whoever forged it was the reason why it has that title. I guess that's the reason. I'm going with that. Anyway, that's everything from Road to Laugh-Tale. Oh, Fujitori's sword was also mentioned, so keep that in mind. So that's everything from Road to Laugh-Tale 2. We get some artwork of Kaido, some, like, preliminary artwork of his man-beast, of his hybrid form, of what it looked like. It was, like, more of, like, a slimmer design. It looked kind of interesting, but I'm happy we got what we got in the story. So now moving on to Road to Laugh-Tale Part 3! This one focuses a lot on Joy Boy and Nika, and for that reason, I've made a lot of videos about these topics before, because these are some of the greatest mysteries in all of One Piece. I just did a video while I was on vacation. I uploaded it called, it was all about the Noah, where I talk about the Promise, and I talk about Joy Boy, and I talk about Poseidon there, so I'm not going to go into huge detail here. It's sort of just recaps of, okay, who's who brought up, like, okay, the sun god Nika was worshipped by the slaves of the world a really long time ago, prayed to the sun god, and the slaves were given hope. It was also mentioned by the 5 elders that there was this sun deity, okay, a very long time ago. It's the most ridiculous power in the world. That is something that's been brought up many, many times. So don't overlook that, is something I would say. Don't overlook it as like, oh, it's the most ridiculous power in the world. That's just something some people say because it sounds cool. No, that might actually tie back in a weird, like, metaphysical way into how Luffy's powers work, okay? Like, ridiculous in this context is more similar to freedom, because Joy Boy and the sun god and the fruit that embodies the sun god's power is all about freedom and liberation, the warrior of liberation. And so liberation in this context is just viewed as this ridiculous power that gives you access to Toon Force and all these cartoony, wacky sound effects. And I guess that's the ultimate apex for freedom in this world, right? So just view it like that. A little bit esoteric, a little bit hard to understand, but that's the way Oda's going with it. The Skypiea scene is brought up, which I love that, because that was something so many people on YouTube were talking about and theorizing and everything about how the scene at Skypiea, when they were playing the drums and they were having the party and Luffy's silhouette looked exactly like Nika's silhouette. It was mentioned here in the Road to Laugh-Tale. So I really like that little focus there of just like even the official context of the manga is like, yeah, remember the scene at Skypiea? Remember when Luffy was dancing and the silhouette? It looked a lot like Nika's silhouette, so there you go, kids. There you go. It's like there's going to be a relevant tie back to that. Like, okay. Let's see, Joy Boy, first appearance in 800 years. This is the same devil fruit that Joy Boy had. Luffy now has, the Hito Hito no Mi mythical variant model Nika, the sun god. Zunisha mentions this. There's, references to Poseidon in the apology letter. We know all about all this already, made a lot of videos about this. There is a devil fruit list that compiles all the devil fruit users in the story. I combed through it. I was trying to look to see if there was like a character whose devil fruit ability has never been revealed, or the name of it has not been revealed yet, and we find out here, like a Rouge or Bonnie, for instance. But no, that's not on there, which makes me once again, these are just like the assistants or the editors or whatever going through all the information, maybe even going on the wiki and just compiling some information and just publishing it in the magazine. Maybe that's what they're doing just to bring everybody up to speed, okay? So, the only interesting thing here to bring up is that it is mentioned that when Paramecias awaken their powers, they have the ability to manipulate and change their surroundings in some way. And with zones, it's different, so it specifically clarifies, as we already knew, that Paramecia awakenings and zone awakenings are different. It doesn't go into any detail or even mention Logia awakenings, which makes sense because it's never been directly mentioned in the story, so it makes sense it wouldn't be compiled here. But from what we can understand, when you awaken a Logia, you have the ability to manipulate the weather, as we saw on Punk Hazard and like Raijin Island, for instance. So it mentions that zones are different from Paramecias, where their bodies go through a change, not necessarily their surroundings. Now, the only difference there, and a little bit of kind of splitting hairs here, is when you get into the mythical variant of zones. Like, so Kaido, if he is awakened, which it once again is not confirmed here, but I'm pretty damn certain that Kaido is an awakened user of his Azure Dragon Fruit, he has the ability as a mythical zone to manipulate the weather in a certain way, where he generates the flame clouds, and the flame clouds can change the weather, okay? And he can also use these clouds to lift things up and stuff. So technically speaking, he is affecting his environment, but it's a different way than a paramecia affects the environment, okay? And this only really comes up when you're talking about mythical zones, just like how Sengoku can do the shock waves and stuff. Regular zones that awaken, like the Demon Guards and Impel Down, we're actually going to get back to them in a moment. All that really happens with regular zones is they become a lot more muscular. Their animal nature kind of takes over a little bit more. If you want to say Chopper's Monster Point is an awakening or like a pseudo-awakening, it sort of falls in that same vein. You know, like Minotauros at Impel Down was not able to like manipulate the weather or change the surrounding area into an element or something. Like Minotauros's awaken is he can turn the entire area around him into cows. That's his ability. He touches a rock and it turns into a cow. That's the true awakening. No, regular zones, you know, just get more muscular, more like their regeneration, their healing factor goes through the roof, that kind of stuff, that kind of jazz. But when you get to mythical, you get a change in the body, but also another added effect on top of that, okay? And Luffy's just goes completely wacky with it. Let's see. It does clarify that with Logias, though, the only way to defeat them properly is to use Haki or an element weakness. Now, that is something interesting. I'm glad they reminded everybody, because before Haki was the end-all, be-all for fighting against a Logia, there's like every Logia has a direct element weakness. That's how Luffy was able to beat Crocodile, by using water or his sweat or his blood or something in order to punch him, because that's how he was able to touch the sand, okay? So Crocodile's natural weakness on top of the standard Devil Fruit weakness was water or moisture, okay? And so likewise, like for example, if Caribou has the Numa no Mi, he's a Logia, he's like the swamp man or like the mud. If he fought against like Ace or Sabo using fire, that might actually like dry up the mud, and so that might not make his ability work anymore. So like, and just like how like for example, Monet's Yuki no Mi is snow and Ace is fire, that's probably a better clash there. We saw how the interaction between Akainu and Ace went, okay, with the magma fruit and the fire fruit. So like every Logia has a direct element opposite that could damage it, okay? Going along with those lines, even though let's say Caribou might be weak to high heat, Caribou being earth might not be affected by Eneru's Goro Goro at all, because it's lightning and he's made of mud, so it conducts electricity or is like an insulator. I don't know, but maybe understand where I'm going with this here. Just like how I'm going by Pokemon logic, okay? 9 times out of 10 whenever I'm talking about Logias, I'm talking about Pokemon logic here, okay? So like you use an electric type against a ground type, it doesn't work. So therefore, Caribou could defeat Eneru in one-on-one single combat. We've already established this. There we go. So yeah, there's also a map. Geography is everything in Laugh Tale 3, but it's not really, it's like a sketch map. It's like what Oda did, like a little bit of a sketch just to see the basic layout of Wano. The actual maps that we've seen so far are a lot nicer and have the same information. I am going to be doing, by the way, a Geography is Everything episode on Wano after the Wano arc has finally concluded properly. I was going to do it during the break month because I assumed Wano would have been over by now, but it isn't. It's still going on. So who knows? Who knows? Like, maybe who knows? I don't know. But in the next chapter, we might have, like, the Kibi region. We might go to Mount Fuji. We might see the Mogura port. We might get more of the country that we haven't seen yet, so I don't want to make the Geography is Everything video quite yet. But I will be doing one on that, and I'll be doing a separate one, like sister videos on Wano and Onigashima. Okay, so like 2-part videos kind of situation, okay? So look forward to that. Then finally, we get to Road to Laugh Tale, Part 4, the one that just came out. And this one is all about bounties, Luffy's Gear 5, the secret tales, as I said, and some extra stuff involving, like, Yamato's, like, backstory with Fuga. So the first page is we get to see a giant double-page spread of all of the most prominent bounties in One Piece, okay? Every bounty that is 100 million or higher made it into the ranking on this page. Now, once again, I combed through this. I was looking for, like, oh, there's a character whose bounty was updated. These are all the bounties that we only know about as of chapter 1053, as of the last chapter, okay? So keep that in mind, okay? So there's no, like, oh, this is Blackbeard's new bounty, or this is, like, the Straw, it's like Zoro's new bounty, Sanji's new bounty. Their numbers have definitely gone up since the battle, but we don't know about them yet in the context of the manga, so they're not here right now. Even so, I want to say, it is still really cool to see an official double-page spread of all of the bounties laid out in order. I mean, you could get this same information off the wiki, but it's cool to see it. So, Roger, of course, has the highest bounty of any pirate ever, followed by Whitebeard at number 2, Kaido at number 3, Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin, number 4, Shanks is number 5, Luffy, as of right now, is number 6. Along with Eustace Kid and Trafalgar Law, because they all share the same space, okay? But still, that's pretty cool to think, like, Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy, the plucky rubber kid from the East Blue, now has the 6th highest bounty out of every pirate. And that includes Roger and Whitebeard, who are dead, Kaido and Big Mom, who are taken out so far because they defeated them. So really, it's just Shanks has the highest active bounty, you know, beyond Luffy, Kid, and Law right now, okay, that we know of. Like, Shanks' bounty could have gone up, Blackbeard's bounty could have gone up as well. Also, because Luffy, Kid, and Law all share the 6th spot, it skips over 7 and 8. So it goes, like, number 6, Luffy, Law, and Kid, and then number 9 is Blackbeard, okay, with his bounty of, like, 2 billion something, okay? So I think it's higher now, so I don't think this is going to actually be accurate for very much longer, but for right now, that's where we stand. It also goes all the way down to the lowest bounties on this list were actually Dory and Broggy's bounties at number 66, sharing the 66 spots with 100 million berries each, okay? And that is fascinating, because remember when we first arrived at Little Garden and we had, like, you know, Galdino show up the old wanted posters of Dory and Broggy of, like, these are the giants of the giant warrior pirates, and they were not seen for 100 years, but their bounties were 100 million. Like, that was huge. That was bigger than Crocodile's bounty. Granted, Crocodile's was frozen at the time, but you know, so Luffy's bounty was like 30 after he defeated Arlong, right? And so 30 million was like the highest in the East. And so we were all like, wow, 30 million, that's crazy. Good for Luffy. And then we find out about this Crocodile guy who had an original bounty of 81 million. And we're like, 81 million, that's like 4 times as much as Arlong was, right? And it's been frozen, right? And then we get to Little Garden, it's like, whoa, these giants have 100 million each? That's insanity, right? So that was back at Little Garden, like shortly after chapter 100 of the series, and now flash forward to over chapter 1000, and Dory and Broggy barely make the cut. They barely make the list. 66th place. There are that many more people with higher bounties, 65 more people with higher bounties than them in the story. So I just wanted to add a little bit of context there. But we have some other interesting stuff involving the bounties. Something that I did notice that I didn't realize before is that, did you know Ace, back when he was still alive, obviously his bounty is inactive now, but Ace and Oars Jr. had the same bounty? Yeah, 550 million. It makes sense given that they were really good friends, but I just never noticed that before. And they were both in the 20th spot. Then, here's interesting. Do you know who the highest bounty out of all the Straw Hats is beyond Luffy? So Luffy obviously has 3 billion right now. He's the captain. He is the 6th highest bounty in the entire world out of every bounty we've known for pirates so far. 6th place, okay? Below him is Jinbei. Yes, Jinbei with a confirmed bounty of like 400-something million. And he is 29th place. So once again, this does not include the Straw Hats, like, new bounties. Like, Jinbei's bounty is obviously going to be higher after this. But I just find that funny that, like, Luffy is in 6th place, and then the next Straw Hat after him, 29th place. There you go. And then it goes Jinbei, Sanji, and then Zoro, and then I think Usopp right after that, which is the funniest thing. But yeah, so those numbers will all go up, though, so it's not going to stay like that for long. And then they also talk about the Warlord's bounties, but they're not, of course, revealed here. Then it goes into a little bit of more sketch art involving Luffy's Gear 5th form, just some different concept designs. Obviously, Oda had a lot of interesting ideas to depict Gear 5th, and even some of the ideas we see here, we still might see them in the future of the story. Just because they didn't show up in the fight with Kaido, they didn't make the cut there, they might still show up later on. My favorite is there looks to be a concept art for, remember when Luffy lost his stamina, like he was in and then it like died for a moment and he had to like reactivate it, and he was like really drained. There's like apparently a concept art that Oda had where like Luffy looks down at his chest and like a little counter, like a little clock shows up and it's like tick, 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 tick. He's like, oh no, I'm out of time. Bump, 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 I'm back, you know, like something like that. And I'm like, dude, that would have been so funny. I hope Oda goes ahead with that concept. Like Luffy's running around using Gear 5th and like a little timer shows up on his chest and he's like, oh no, I'm almost out of time. Boink. I better get this done. You know, like that would be so funny. Okay, I just want to see that. All right, so please make that a reality, Oda. Like Luffy's part robot. I mean, it's Gear 5th. You can pretty much just you have carte blanche to do whatever you want at this point. Just go crazy with it. It's the end of the story. You know, Luffy has a magic little clock on his chest that tells him like tick 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 tick. You're almost done, Luffy. I wouldn't. You know what? You know what? I wouldn't even be upset if, like, a little tiny man just pops out of Luffy and just says, hey there, Luffy, how you doing? I'm the tiny man that lives inside of you. You only got about 30 seconds left to Gear 5th, so be careful. It's like, I don't care. It's just like, whatever, it works, fine. It also goes into detail involving the zones, how there is a risk with awakening zones, and it says that the animal consumes the user. All right, this is actually part of the notes that Oda wrote down. So, like, Oda wrote some notes down and gave them to this, and then now it's in the Road to Laugh Tale. Okay, so this is something directly from Oda here, okay? So, animal consumes the users, and we've seen this with the Impel Down Demon Guards, where they were humans, purportedly, that ate these fruits, awakened to their powers, but they are way more animalistic now. They don't have a lot of, like, they stand on 2 feet, and their midriff sections has like rippling abs, but beyond that, they're just wild animals and they behave as such. They don't even seem to have the ability to speak language anymore. They understand Sadie's directions, but that's it. They seem to be more animals rather than people. So that's a really interesting drawback that Oda includes here for awakening a zone, where if like you kind of give up your sanity as a human to gain more power as an animal. There you go. Now, this might work differently for Luffy as well as Chopper, because remember, their zones are the Hito Hito no Mi. They're the human fruit. By the way, aside, but I would really like to see if Luffy finds out that he has a human fruit. I just want to see Luffy and Chopper just like talking about that. Like, oh my god, Luffy, you have a human fruit too? It's like, yeah, Chopper, I guess I do. Oh my god. And they like hug and like that would... That would be great. That would be adorbs. Can we see that, please? Like, they're just like, we have the same fruit. We're awesome together. Awesome. That's so cool. You know, like, that would be cute. I would like to see that. But anyway, yeah. So they have the human fruit. So that's why, like, even when Chopper goes into his initial monster point was like that, but his perfected monster point, he actually can maintain his sanity. That's probably the reason why, because they are animals, but at the end of the day, humans have the higher intelligence. So it's just like, okay, they become more animalistic, but they're still able to maintain their sanity and their reasoning, okay? Also, probably the reason why Oda has been introducing a lot more human fruits. Like, there's the Hito Hito no Mi model, Daibutsu, that Sengoku has. There's the Hito Hito no Mi that Onimaru has. You know, there's a lot of, like, human fruit mythical models that are popping up. That's probably the reason, so he can circumvent this downside, so they don't become, like, a mindless... Because if Luffy did not have the Hito Hito no Mi model, if it was just a regular animal, then Luffy's awakening, or if Chopper as well, might just go into mindless beast mode. And while mindless beast mode is pretty cool, like, you know, pre-time skip Monster Point Chopper was really cool, can't really develop that character a lot if they're just rampaging around all the time. Like, if Chopper just never got a handle on his monster point and he's still just like a crazy monster all the time, I feel like, you know, there's a limit to what you can really do with that, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that makes sense. Something else in the notes that Oda wrote down, but then he crossed out, at least it looks like he crossed out in the page, is he wrote down that the sun god Nika wins people over, or has the ability to win people over, but then he crossed it out. So that's interesting, because that goes back to something that Mihawk mentioned at Marineford, where it's like, you know, Straw Hat Luffy, his greatest power is not his strength. His greatest power is that he always, like, gets people on his side. Okay, he always wins people over. So that is very clearly, I don't know if that's, like, Oda struggling with, like, that's a focus of the fruit's power, or that's just Luffy's personality. I think that might be why he crossed it out. Oda might actually have a moment where he's like, okay, do I make this ability to win people over and gain allies? Do I make that a feature of the fruit's power? Like you eat the fruit and you get the ability to sort of manipulate people in that way? Or do I not make it that power and I just make it that's just Luffy's bright personality that's able, like his magnetic personality, able to get people on his side? And it goes back to like one of the things where it's like, if you just make everything that's interesting about Luffy because he has a devil fruit, then, you know, Luffy sort of loses some stuff. And I'm sure he's already lost a lot of stuff in people's minds already just because of the fruit that he has, you know? Like, people liked it back when Luffy just had a regular paramecia, the gum fruit, and that was it. There was nothing special about it. There was nothing unique about it. It was kind of a crappy devil fruit ability, but Luffy made it powerful through his training. So now that he has the god fruit, he still had to train to get really powerful with it, but now it's sort of getting into, like, chosen one territory and stuff, and so I think Oda might be like, I don't want to make everything special about Luffy just tied back to the devil fruit. I'm going to make that more about him. But maybe you could see here, like, he considered that as a possibility, but he decided to scratch it out and go with something else. And I hope that, I hope he did do that. Like, that is actually what he went with, and we'll find out about that. Like, at some point, maybe a character will even mention to Luffy, like, well, you know, yes, the sun god was able to get people on their side, but that had nothing to do with the fruit. That had everything to do with their personality. Joy Boy's personality, and now your personality, Luffy. That would be something that would make Luffy still more special. Like, it's just not all about the fruit, you know? It goes into detail of how, you know, he laughs and it relieves suffering. That might become a literal thing. Like, Luffy laughing might actually relieve the suffering and injuries of people around him. Like, if his friends are really beaten up, Luffy laughing might actually get them back up like an energy boost or something. Like, that could be literal. We don't know. The pure white, the idea that Luffy's, like, his hair goes white, his clothing goes white, he has, like, a white glow around him when he goes into this form. Is also going to be very relevant. I'm assuming it's because he's the sun god, you know, so there you go. Let's see. The more he laughs, the stronger he gets. That was in there, which is confirmed. We've kind of seen that. The more he's in the form, it seems he does get stronger, but he also drains himself a lot faster as well. So there's like a double-edged sword with that. Luffy's going to have to figure out how to balance the ability there. And the last big thing that was mentioned is when Luffy punched out Kaido with the final attack, the monkey god gun, the giant... Here comes the giant fist! The giant fist that rocked the entire nation. It was specifically mentioned here that that attack, the shockwaves felt by that attack, were felt thousands of miles away, or thousands of kilometers away. So that's a new piece of information. That was not something that we previously knew about, if that is literal, if that's not just a turn of phrase, or just like, it was felt, the shockwaves were felt around the world. Like, not literally around the world, but they were felt around the, you know? So if that's meant to be taken literally, though, there's some stuff you can play with that. You could go and like, oh, there was an island, like Blackbeard's fleet, you know, thousands of miles away, felt the shockwave. Shanks, also thousands of miles away, also felt the shockwave. Like, it could be something like that, right? So you can play with that, definitely. The last things that are mentioned here in Laugh Tale Volume 4, and I'll wrap it up after this, is just some extra stuff with Odin's backstory. And they're not really that important. It's just some extra character development stuff for the Scabbards, really. So we got some extra stuff with Kinemon. We got introduced to Kurokoma. And Kurokoma, if you don't know who that is, he was mentioned like twice during the flashback, and that was it. Kurokoma was like Hyogoro's rival, like Yakuza, like he was the Yakuza boss before Hyogoro, and Hyogoro like defeated him, and then that's how he became the Yakuza boss. And then after Hyogoro, it was Kyoshiro, right? So that's him. He was not very relevant. He didn't even show up, although he was supposed to show up. And that was something tied into the boar incident, the mountain god incident that Odin sliced in half. So yeah, we find out some stuff about him. We also find out an expanded backstory on Izo and Okiku. where we would find out Izo's last name, which was the same last name as the school that they come from, the dancing school where their father was part of. But their father was classified as a criminal, and so that's why they were living on the streets, like begging, like dancing for change. So yeah, we find out some little bit more stuff about Izo and Kiku, but it's more of just like general character development stuff. It's not like we find out like any big thing about Okiku or Izo or anything. It's just like spending more time with Odin and how they joined and everything like that. That was pretty much it, right? Still nice to read. And then we have Yamato and Fuga's little backstory, which that's pretty simple. So it was basically Fuga was a member of the Numbers that went against Kaido's wishes and ate one of the Smiles, which I guess the Numbers are not supposed to do that because they're already so powerful and unpredictable. Eating a Smile might make it even worse. Luckily, Fuga ate one of the Smiles that was the good Smile, so he actually gained the benefit, and that's why Fuga has like centaur legs. You know, looks different from all the other Numbers, even though they're all monsters. And so Kaido basically got really pissed at Fuga, probably beat the shit out of him. Like, Fuga, what are you doing? Down, boy, down! Drop the Smile fruit! And because the Numbers don't really have high intelligence, so they're just like, Fuga, sorry. It's like, no! Bad Fuga! Go sit in the corner! And so Fuga goes sits in the corner and just like, I'm sad. And then Yamato shows up and is just like, I like your legs, Fuga. They look really cool. And Fuga's like, Fuga, thank you. We friends now. You know, and so that's the story. There's the backstory with that. And so, yeah, that's pretty much everything. And then Laugh Tale, Road to Laugh Tale Volume 4 ends with just a cool page that says, you know, the final saga, the dawn draws closer. Boom, 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 boom. Yep. Okay, so that's it. The Dawn, something that has been referenced quite a bit in One Piece theories for years and years. The Dawn will arrive. It certainly will arrive. All right, well, anyway, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm glad I was just able to wrap all that up in a nice little bow before we get to the next chapter of One Piece. I don't have any jellyfish facts for you today because I spent all my time writing down all the stuff with the Road to Laugh Tales. But thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'm sure we got great names for this family of 5 owls back here, so that's great. I like alliteration. Just keep that in mind. Alliteration is gold, so you know, you got to go with the alliteration. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking, signing out. Later, everyone.